Marlo Finnegan saw the gun before anyone else should have, but she didn't. A homeless boy did. It was 2:43 in the morning at a truck stop that existed solely because Interstate 40 needed somewhere for the desperate and the weary to pause between Albuquerque and Amarillo. The kind of place where fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects, and the coffee tasted like it had been brewing since the Carter administration. Where truckers nodded off over plates of congealed gravy and lot lizards worked the shadows and nobody asked questions because nobody wanted answers. The black SUV had been sitting in the far corner of the asphalt ocean for 97 minutes. Marlo knew because she'd clocked it the moment she rolled in on her Harley an hour and a half ago. Old habits from old days. You don't survive 15 years wearing a Hell's Angels patch by ignoring vehicles that don't belong. Engine off. Windows tinted so dark they look like holes punched through reality itself. Nobody got out, nobody went in, just sat there like a patient predator, waiting for something specific to happen. She should have paid more attention to that, should have trusted the instinct that had kept her alive through bar fights and bad deals and one particularly ugly incident in Tucson that she still didn't talk about. But her mind was somewhere else. 340 miles away, in a courtroom where a judge would decide if a 7-year-old girl spent her childhood with a grandmother who loved her or a father who loved meth more than his own daughter. The diner door chimed when she pushed through. Brass bell on a spring, cheerful sound completely at odds with the 3 a.m. emptiness. 2 truckers at the counter. Waitress who looked like she'd been on shift since the Reagan administration. Cook visible through the service window, cigarette dangling from his lips in clear violation of about 17 health codes. Marlo slid into a booth by the window, not because she wanted to watch her bike, because she wanted to watch that SUV. Her phone buzzed against her hip. She pulled it out with hands that showed every one of her 58 years. Scarred knuckles from fights she'd won and a few she hadn't. Calluses from gripping handlebars through desert heat and mountain cold. Fingers that had changed diapers and thrown punches and now just wanted to braid a little girl's hair without wondering if it was the last time. The lock screen photo made her chest tighten the way it always did. Bryn, 7 years old with gap teeth and wild auburn hair that refused to behave no matter how much detangler you used. Standing in front of Marlo's Harley, wearing an oversized Hell's Angels shirt like a dress and grinning like she'd just discovered the secret to eternal happiness. The text message was 3 words. Grandma, when you home? Marlo's thumb hovered over the keyboard. Started to type a response. Stopped. Started again. The truth was she didn't know when she'd be home. Didn't know if this ride to nowhere was running from something or toward it. 6 weeks until the custody hearing. 6 weeks to prove to a family court judge that a 58-year-old biker grandmother was a better option than a 35-year-old father who just happened to have a felony possession charge and 3 failed rehab attempts. The logical answer was obvious. But the law wasn't always logical. And Travis had a lawyer who knew how to weaponize respectability. She pocketed the phone without responding. Some conversations required more than text. Required looking into those bright eyes and explaining why the world was complicated and unfair. And sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones you needed protection from. The waitress materialized beside her booth, 60-something with a name tag that said Darlene and eyes that had seen everything twice. Coffee, hun, please. Marlo's voice came out rougher than intended. Desert wind and cigarette smoke and years of shouting over engine roar had sanded it down to gravel. Darlene poured without asking if she wanted cream or sugar. Good waitress instinct. Read the customer. Woman alone at a truck stop at 3 in the morning, nursing emotional wounds, didn't want cream and sugar. She wanted something strong enough to keep the ghosts at bay. You okay, sweetheart? Darlene's question carried no judgment. Just the tired kindness of someone who'd served coffee to the broken and the running for longer than most people had been alive. Marlo managed something that might have been a smile on a better day. Just taking the long way home. Darlene's tone said she'd heard that line before. Believed it about as much as she believed the cook when he swore he'd quit smoking. But she moved on without pressing. Some people wanted to talk. Some people wanted to be left alone with their coffee and their thoughts and whatever they were running from. Marlo wrapped both hands around the mug. Heat seeping through ceramic into skin. Grounding. Real. She let her gaze drift back to the window. to her Harley parked under the sickly yellow lights, and beyond it, barely visible in the darkness, that black SUV that still hadn't moved. Something was wrong about it. Not just the tinted windows or the fact that it had been sitting there for over an hour. Something deeper, the way it was angled, positioned for a clear line of sight to the diner entrance, but obscured from the view of anyone inside. Professional positioning, tactical. Marlowe had seen that kind of setup before. Different context, different decade. But the same calculated patience of people who were very good at waiting for exactly the right moment to do something very bad. Her hand moved automatically to her belt, to the knife she'd carried for 15 years. 7 inches of steel that had opened boxes and cut rope, and once in a parking lot outside Bakersfield, convinced 3 men that maybe they'd picked the wrong woman to corner. She wasn't afraid. Fear was a luxury she'd stopped being able to afford around the same time she'd buried her husband and watched her son spiral into addiction and found herself standing in a hospital nursery, looking at her granddaughter and realizing that second chances came in unexpected packages. But she was alert, combat ready. Whatever was about to happen, she'd be ready for it. What she wasn't ready for was the boy. Declan Thorne had been unseen for so long, he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be noticed. 3 months living in the margins of truck stops and rest areas, and the cold concrete spaces behind dumpsters where people threw away things they didn't want anymore. Learning the rules of survival that nobody taught you in school. Be quiet, be small, be nothing worth noticing. He'd perfected the art of human camouflage, the way certain insects could mimic leaves so perfectly that predators looked right through them. He moved through the world like a ghost, and the world returned the favor by pretending he didn't exist. Tonight he was tucked into the narrow gap between the dumpster and the cinder block wall of the truck stop, where the smell of rotting food and old grease was so strong it made his empty stomach cramp. But the smell also meant nobody came back here. Nobody wanted to look too closely at where the garbage went, which made it perfect for a boy who needed to be nowhere. His backpack sat between his feet. Everything he owned in the world compressed into one school bag with a broken zipper. One t-shirt that used to be white. A pair of jeans that were more whole than fabric. Socks so thin you could see through them. A cracked phone with no service that he kept anyway because deleting the photos felt like giving up. And buried at the very bottom, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag to keep it safe, a photograph that he couldn't look at but couldn't throw away. Lennon, his sister, 8 years old in the picture, which meant she was 11 now. Same age he was, except she was somewhere in the foster system, being raised by strangers, and he was behind a dumpster in New Mexico, trying to remember what it felt like to sleep without one eye open. 3 years since that night. 3 years since he'd stood paralyzed in their kitchen while their stepfather Garrett beat their mother so badly she couldn't stand. While Lennon screamed and covered her ears and begged for it to stop. While Declan's feet refused to move and his voice died in his throat and his whole body locked up like someone had cut his strings. The social worker had come the next day, took one look at the broken furniture and the blood on the floor and their mother's blackened eye and made the decision that would split their world in half. Lennon was young enough, sweet enough, undamaged enough to place quickly into a home with a family that wanted a daughter. Declan was 11, old enough to be considered difficult, old enough to have seen too much, old enough that foster families looked at him and saw a problem waiting to happen instead of a kid who just needed someone to step in. So Lennon went to strangers who promised to love her. And Declan went back to Garrett because the system decided that one parent with a temper was better than no parents at all. Lasted 4 months before he ran. Been running ever since. The cold desert wind cut through his thin hoodie. October in New Mexico meant the days were still hot enough to fry eggs on asphalt, but the nights dropped into the 40s. He pulled the fabric tighter around his body, trying to trap what little warmth he had. Tried not to think about how nice it would be to sleep inside. How long it had been since he'd had a real meal instead of whatever the truck stop threw away. He was good at not thinking about things, good at pushing down the memories and the hunger and the cold and the bone-deep exhaustion of never feeling safe. Good at being overlooked, which was why he noticed when things didn't fit the pattern. The black SUV had been there when he'd arrived 2 hours ago looking for a safe corner to spend the night. He'd clocked it immediately. Survival instinct. You learn to catalog everything. Which vehicles had been there for hours versus minutes? Which people were passing through versus lingering? Who might notice a homeless kid versus who would look right through him? The SUV was wrong. Windows too dark, too new and too clean for a truck stop at 3 in the morning. Engine off, but nobody getting out. Just sitting there like it was waiting for something. Declan had almost moved to a different location, found somewhere else to sleep. But then he'd seen the woman on the motorcycle, and something made him stay. She'd rolled in alone on a Harley that sounded like controlled thunder. Older woman, maybe his mom's age would have been if she'd lived. Gray streaks and dark hair pulled back tight. Leather vest covered in patches that even from a distance Declan recognized. Hell's Angels, the scary people the news warned you about. The ones who supposedly dealt drugs and beat people up and were generally the human equivalent of keep out signs. But Declan had been a ghost long enough to see what people didn't mean to show. And what he saw was the way she checked her phone first thing after parking. The way her shoulders dropped like she was carrying weight that never got lighter. The way her thumb lingered on the screen for a long moment before she put it away. That was a mother's gesture. Or a grandmother's. Someone who had people waiting for them. Someone who carried photos like Declan carried Lennon's. Like the phone was a lifeline to something worth living for. She'd gone into the diner, sat in a booth by the window, and that's when the SUV started moving. Not the vehicle itself, the doors. They opened in perfect synchronization. Driver's side and passenger side. Two men stepping out into the darkness with movements so coordinated they looked choreographed. Not the movements of tired drivers stretching their legs. The movements of people executing a plan they'd rehearsed. Declan's whole body went cold. Colder than the October wind. Colder than the concrete under his back. The kind of cold that came from recognition. From having seen this before in a different context but with the same terrible choreography. The two men didn't talk, didn't yawn or check phones or do any of the normal human things people did when they got out of a car after sitting for 2 hours. They just moved. One drifted left, one drifted right, creating an angle of approach, converging on the diner entrance in a slow, patient arc. Declan knew that pattern, had seen it on nature documentaries, the way wolves separated prey from the herd, the way predators created geometry that gave the victim nowhere to run. His heart started hammering, fight or flight response kicking in, every survival instinct screaming at him to stay down, stay quiet, stay unseen. This wasn't his business. This wasn't his problem. Whatever was about to happen to the woman in the diner was not something an 11-year-old homeless boy could or should get involved with. The right-hand man's jacket shifted as he walked. Declan saw the bulge, saw the way his elbows stuck out at an unnatural angle, like something heavy was tucked against his ribs under the fabric. He'd seen that shape before too, 3 years ago. Kitchen with blood on the linoleum and Lennon crying behind the table. Garrett waving a gun at the social worker and slurring words about how nobody was taking his kids. The barrel catching fluorescent light as it swung in wild arcs. Their mother's split lip bleeding down her chin. Declan unable to move in the doorway, unable to speak, unable to do anything except stand there and let it happen. The memory crashed through him like a physical blow. He could smell the blood, could hear Lennon's sobs, could feel his own uselessness like a weight around his neck. The man's hand slid inside his jacket, fingers curling around something metallic. The parking lot was full of ambient noise, idling trucks, buzzing lights, highway traffic in the distance. But to Declan, it all went silent. Like someone had hit mute on the entire world. All he could see was the woman in the diner. Head bent over her coffee. Back to the door. Easy target. This is not your business. The survival voice hissed in his head. The voice that had kept him alive for 3 months on the streets. Stay down. Stay quiet. Nobody ever stepped in for you. Nobody ever saved your mother or your sister. You screamed for help and nobody came. Why should you be different? His fingers brushed against his pocket, against the outline of Lennon's photo through the fabric. He saw her face, gap-toothed grin and braided hair, and eyes that still believed big brothers could protect you from bad things. Heard her voice from 3 years ago, small and terrified. Declan, do something. Please do something. The man's gun cleared the jacket, black metal catching the parking lot lights, barrel rising toward the diner window, toward the woman who had no idea death was 10 seconds away. 3 years of silence shattered. Declan's legs moved before his brain caught up, before fear could lock him down again, before the voice of survival could convince him to stay small and hidden and safe. He exploded out of the shadows, shoes slapping pavement, heart trying to punch through his ribcage, voice ripping out of his throat like something feral and desperate and absolutely certain this was the last thing he'd ever do. Gun, the word came out cracked and raw. 11-year-old vocal cords not built for the volume of terror and determination he was trying to shove through them. But it was loud enough to cut through the ambient noise, loud enough to make the shooter's head snap toward the sound. Time did something strange, slowed down and sped up simultaneously. Declan saw everything with horrible clarity, the shooter's face turning, expression shifting from focused calm to confused irritation, the gun swinging away from the diner window, tracking toward the source of the scream, toward Declan. He was still running, still moving forward even though every survival instinct was screaming at him to stop, to run the other direction, to disappear back into the shadows where he belonged. Inside the diner, the woman's head snapped up, eyes wide, already moving. The shooter's finger found the trigger. Declan heard the shot before he felt it. Sharp crack that echoed off concrete and metal. Birds scattering from nearby power lines. Truck alarm going off somewhere. Then fire, white hot, exploding through his left side just below his ribs. The impact spun him sideways, feet tangling, world tilting as asphalt rushed up to meet him. He hit the ground hard, shoulder and hip taking the brunt. Pain detonating through his whole body in waves. For half a second, he thought maybe he'd just fallen. Maybe the shooter had missed, and this was just the shock of hitting pavement. Then the warmth started spreading, soaking through his hoodie, pooling under his back. And the truth slammed home with the weight of something final and irreversible. He'd been shot. The taste of copper flooded his mouth. His vision went fuzzy at the edges. Above him, the parking lot lights buzzed and flickered. Little dying stars in a universe that had never cared if he lived or died. But he'd done it. For the first time in 3 years, when it mattered, he'd moved. He'd screamed. He'd stepped between a gun and someone who needed saving. He'd finally done something. Blood roared in Marlowe's ears, louder than the gunshot still echoing across the parking lot, louder than her own heartbeat, louder than the screaming that was coming from somewhere she couldn't immediately identify. The second bullet went wild when she moved. One moment she'd been a siding target in a diner booth. The next she dropped behind her Harley like muscle memory from a different life. Her hand found the knife on her belt. 7 inches of steel that suddenly felt inadequate against firearms, but was better than nothing. The second shooter's gun cleared his coat. Too slow. Marlowe launched herself at him from a crouch, low and brutal. All 58 years and 135 pounds of her channeled into her shoulder as it connected with his ribs. His shot tore into the sky. Harmless. The gun clattered from his hand as they went down together. Marlowe's blade kissed his forearm, not deep, just enough to make him scream and curl into himself and stop being a threat. A truck screeched to a halt. Glass shattered inside the diner. Someone was yelling about guns. Boots thudded on pavement as drivers ducked behind their rigs or scrambled for their cabs. The black SUV's engine roared back to life, tires squealing. The first shooter scrambled inside, clutching his wrist where blood was starting to seep. The vehicle fishtailed out of the parking lot, heading for the interstate with the kind of speed that suggested this was a planned extraction. Marlowe let them go. She had bigger problems. The boy was lying on the asphalt 20 feet away. Small, so impossibly small, couldn't be more than 11 or 12. Wearing a hoodie so thin she could see through it in places. Sneakers with the soles separating. The kind of kid that existed in peripheral vision. That society looked through instead of at. He was staring up at the stars with eyes that were trying very hard to stay focused. Each breath came shallow and sharp, like knives between ribs. His left side was dark with spreading wetness that looked black under the sodium lights, but Marlowe knew was red. She dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands went automatically to the wound, fingers pressing hard into his side, trying to slow the bleeding, trying to keep his life from leaking out onto truck stop asphalt in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. His blood was hot against her palms, slick and terrifying. "Stay with me, kid." Her voice came out harder than she meant. Command voice, the voice that had talked down angry drunks and kept order in clubhouses and once convinced a state trooper that the suspicious bulge under her jacket was absolutely not what he thought it was. "Hey, look at me. What's your name?" His eyes rolled toward her, struggled to focus. Lips moved. Sound came out thin and reedy. "Declan." She nodded once, filing it away, making it real. He had a name. He was a person, not just some random kid who'd done something impossibly stupid and brave. "I'm Marlowe. You just stepped in front of a bullet for me, Declan." Why, the question probably wasn't fair to ask a boy who was bleeding out. But Marlowe needed to know, needed to understand what would make a child throw himself between a stranger and death. His answer came in fragments, words separated by painful gasps. "Because nobody stepped in front of one for my mom. Because Lennon begged me and I froze. Because I can't live with that silence one more day." Each word hit Marlowe like a physical blow. She saw it all in the spaces between his sentences. Saw the guilt, the trauma, the bone-deep need to make up for some failure that probably wasn't his fault but felt like it anyway. Saw herself reflected back in miniature. Different circumstances, same desperation to protect the people who mattered, even when the world said you weren't enough. "Someone should have stopped it," he choked out, "for my family." No one did. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Red and blue lights already painting the horizon. Marlowe's jaw clenched. Rage burned behind her eyes, but none of it was directed at this boy. All of it was aimed at a world that broke children and then blamed them for breaking. At systems that failed, and adults who looked away, and whatever series of cascading disasters had led to an 11-year-old sleeping behind dumpsters and thinking his life was worth less than a stranger's. She leaned closer, close enough that he could smell leather and gasoline and the copper tang of his own blood on her hands. Close enough that her words carried weight even through his fading focus. "You listen to me, Declan." Her voice dropped, fierce and low. "You didn't just save some random biker. You saved a grandmother. If I died out there, my granddaughter goes back to a father who can't take care of himself, let alone a 7-year-old girl. You didn't just save me. You saved her future." His vision was blurring. She could see it happening. Eyes losing focus, skin going pale, breathing getting shallower. But he was still trying to hold on, still fighting. "Did I at least do something right this time?" The question came out small, childlike. The voice of a kid who'd spent too long believing he was worthless. Marlowe's grip tightened on his hand. Her other hand kept pressure on the wound, but this was important. Making sure he heard this. "You did more than right. You did what most grown men wouldn't. And in my world, that means something." The paramedics came running with the stretcher and a flurry of shouted medical terminology that Marlowe only half understood. Blood pressure, heart rate, gunshot wound, trauma. Someone tried to move her aside. She snarled at them. Actually snarled. "I've got the bleed. You get the line in." They listened, maybe because she said it with such authority, maybe because her hands were already doing the bomb and changing positions mid-crisis was risky. Maybe because something in her face suggested that arguing would be a very bad idea. They lifted Declan as gently as possible, but physics didn't care about gentle. Pain detonated through his small body. She watched him bite down on a scream, swallow it, take it inside himself rather than let it out. That was wrong. All of it was wrong. 11-year-old boys should scream when they hurt, should cry, should have adults who made the pain stop instead of adults who caused it. The ambulance doors yawned open, swallowing the fluorescent chaos. Marlowe climbed in without asking permission. "Ma'am, you can't," the paramedic started. "He saved my life." Marlowe cut him off, voice steel. "That makes him mine. I'm not leaving." The paramedic looked at her vest with its patches and its implications, looked at her hands still covered in Declan's blood, made a calculation, decided that this particular battle wasn't worth fighting. "Fine, but stay out of the way." Marlowe wedged herself into the corner, watched them work. IV line going in, oxygen mask, pressure bandages. A 17-year-old paramedic doing chest compressions, that looked too aggressive until Marlowe remembered that breaking ribs to save a life was sometimes necessary. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Blood smeared across the screen. She didn't care. Scrolled through contacts until she found the name she needed. Barrett Doyle, president of the New Mexico chapter, the man who'd given her a patch 15 years ago when she showed up at the clubhouse with nothing but bruises and determination and a need to belong somewhere that understood what it meant to fight back. The line rang once, twice. A rough voice answered, sleep thick and annoyed. This better be good. It's 3 in the goddamn morning. I need the club. Marlowe's voice was steady now, combat calm, the voice of someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't be talked out of it. I'm calling in the oath. Silence. Then Barrett's voice sharpened, sleep gone, all business. You sure that's not something we invoke lightly? She looked down at the pawn on the gurney, pale as death, breathing assisted by machines, bleeding because he'd decided her life was worth more than his own safety. A child the world had thrown away, who'd proven he had more courage than men twice his size. I'm sure, she said, a kid named Declan just took a bullet from me. Someone tried to kill me, Barrett. Professional hit, 2 shooters, black SUV. They knew where I'd be and when. Travis. Barrett didn't make it a question. Has to be. Marlowe's free hand curled into a fist. He gets me out of the way, he gets Bryn. Gets the inheritance. Gets everything. Where are you, bum? Ambulance. Heading to Albuquerque Medical Center. The boy's critical. I'll make calls. Barrett's voice carried the weight of sworn promises that would be kept. By tomorrow morning, he doesn't wake up alone. None of this stays quiet. You understand what you're doing? Once the oath is called, the whole brotherhood knows. Marlowe understood perfectly. The sacred obligation wasn't all a casual thing. It was an invocation, a declaration that someone outside the club had done something so significant that they were now under permanent protection, that their life was woven into the fabric of the brotherhood, that anyone who came for them came for all of them. It meant Declan would never be a ghost again, for better or worse, whether he wanted it or not. I understand, she said. Do it. She hung up, looked at the paramedic who was adjusting Declan's IV. Is he going to make it? The young man didn't meet her eyes. Bad sign. Bullet went through clean, missed the major organs. But he's lost a lot of blood, and I don't know how long he was on the street before tonight. Malnutrition, dehydration, possible infection. His body's already compromised. Adding trauma like this. He trailed off, let the implication hang. He's a fighter, Marlowe said, stated it like fact. He'll make it. The ambulance screamed through the desert night, lights painting the darkness red and blue, sirens scattering the silence. Inside, machines beeped and hissed, keeping a boy alive who decided dying loud was better than living silent. Marlowe kept her hand on his, anchoring him, letting him know, even unconscious, that someone was there. Someone was paying attention. Someone saw him. The SUV's note was still in her pocket. She'd grabbed it in the chaos. Blood-smeared paper with neat handwriting. Eliminate mother, son inherits estate plus custody of child. Travis, her own son, the boy she'd raised, had tried to kill her for money and a granddaughter he didn't even want except as leverage. As a payday. As a way to access Bryn's trust fund that Marlowe's late husband had set up before the cancer took him. The rage that flooded through her was cold and calculating. The kind of anger that didn't explode. That didn't shout or break things. The kind that planned, that strategized, that would systematically dismantle whatever Travis thought he'd built and make sure he never threatened Bryn again. But first she had to make sure this boy lived, had to honor the oath, had to prove that when someone stepped in for you, you stepped in for them. No matter what it cost. The hospital loomed out of the darkness, white building against black sky, emergency entrance blazing with light. They wheeled Declan in at a run. Marlowe followed until a nurse blocked her path. Family only beyond this point. I'm all he's got. It wasn't quite a lie. Might be the absolute truth for all she knew. The nurse looked at her, at the vest, at the blood, at the set of Marlowe's jaw that said moving her would require security and possibly restraints. Waiting room is through there. We'll update you when we can. It wasn't permission, but it also wasn't denial. Marlowe would take it. The waiting room was the kind of purgatory that hospitals specialized in. Uncomfortable chairs, flickering fluorescent lights, a television playing the news with the sound off, coffee that somehow tasted worse than the truck stop. The existential dread of not knowing if someone you cared about would survive the next hour. Marlowe paced, couldn't sit, couldn't be still. Energy needed somewhere to go, and standing still felt like giving up. Her phone buzzed. Text from Barrett. Word is out, brothers are rolling. How many do you need? She stared at the question, realized she hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't considered the logistics of the sacred obligation beyond the initial invocation. I don't know. Enough to make a statement. You'll have it. Sunrise, full chapter. Anyone close enough to ride will ride. Marlowe's throat tightened. The brotherhood was imperfect, often brutal, frequently judged by outsiders who saw the patches and the leather and made assumptions about character based on appearance. But when it mattered, when one of their own called, they came. No questions, no hesitation. And now Declan was one of their own, whether he knew it yet or not. She typed back, "Thank you. Don't thank me. You invoke the oath. We honor it. That's what separates us from everyone else. We keep our word." Hours crawled past. Doctors came and went, spoke in medical terminology that might as well have been ancient Greek. Marlowe caught fragments. Surgery, transfusion, stable but critical, touch and go, touch and koyo. The phrase that meant, we've done all we can, and now we wait to see if the universe is merciful or cruel. Marlowe finally sat, not because she was calm, because her legs couldn't hold her anymore. She stared at her hands. Declan's blood had dried brown under her fingernails. She should wash it off, should find a bathroom and scrub until her skin was raw. She didn't move. Dawn came slowly, light creeping through the waiting room windows, like it was afraid of what it might find. Marlowe watched the sun rise over Albuquerque and thought about Bryn waking up 300 miles away with no idea that everything had just changed. The parking lot outside started to fill, but not with cars, motorcycles. They arrived in twos and threes at first, then in clusters, then in a steady stream that just kept coming. Harleys and choppers and custom builds, chrome and leather and thunder, parking in neat rows with military precision. Marlowe walked to the window, watched them gather, counted without meaning to. 20, 40, 60. Numbers climbing. Men and women swung off bikes, stretched after long rides. Some looked like they'd been on the road for hours. Some still had bedhead and coffee-stained shirts from rolling out at 4 a.m. when the call came. All wearing vests with patches from different chapters, different states, different lives, all connected by the same code. A nurse appeared beside Marlowe, stared out at the growing crowd. "Ma'am, what is happening in our parking lot?" "A sacred obligation," Marlowe said simply. Like that explained everything. And for anyone who understood the language of the Brotherhood, it did. Barrett walked through the emergency entrance at 7:15. 62 years old with more scars and smooth skin and eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and occasionally its best. He spotted Marlowe immediately, crossed to her in 3 long strides. "How many?" she asked. "Last count 927. Still climbing? Got brothers riding in from Arizona, Colorado, Texas. Word spreads fast when the oath gets called." 927 people. For a boy they'd never met, because one of their own said he mattered. Marlowe's eyes burned. She blinked hard. "He's in surgery." "Touch and show." Barrett's jaw tightened. "He's got 900 reasons to make it. Kids that brave don't quit easy." A doctor emerged through the double doors, young, tired, wearing scrubs with Declan's blood still visible in rusty patches. He looked around the waiting room. "Family of Declan Thorne." Marlowe stepped forward. "Here." The doctor's eyes went to her vest. Processed. Decided not to comment. "He's out of surgery. Bullet went through clean like the paramedics said. We've repaired the damage and given him 2 units of blood. He's stable." But Marlowe heard the word he hadn't said. "But he's severely malnourished, dehydrated. His immune system is compromised. We're keeping him sedated for now to let his body focus on healing. The next 48 hours are critical. If infection sets in, He didn't finish, didn't need to. Can I see him? The doctor hesitated. ICU rules are normally strict about visitors, but given the situation, he gestured vaguely toward the parking lot visible through the windows. I think we can make an exception. 5 minutes. Marlowe followed him through sterile hallways that all looked the same. White walls, squeaking floors, the smell of antiseptic trying to mask the smell of illness. Into the ICU where machines beeped and hissed and did the work that bodies couldn't do alone. Declan looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, surrounded by equipment that dwarfed him. IV lines, oxygen, monitors displaying heart rate and blood pressure, and other metrics Marlowe didn't fully understand. His skin was pale against white sheets, his breathing assisted by a machine that made soft rhythmic sounds. But he was alive, against odds that had been stacked against him probably since birth. Still fighting. Marlowe pulled a chair close, sat, took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV. You're going to make it, she told him, stated it like an order. Like her will alone could bend reality to comply. You're going to wake up and you're going to see something you've probably never seen before. People who give a damn, who stepped in for you the way you stepped in for me. His fingers twitched, maybe unconscious reflex, maybe some part of him could hear. I don't know your whole story yet, Marlowe continued. Don't know what put you on the street or who failed you or what you've survived to get here. But I know this, you saved my granddaughter's future, and that is a debt I can never repay. So I'm going to try anyway. I'm going to make sure you're never a ghost again, whether you want it or not. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then looked. The message made her blood run cold. This is Elspeth Magruder from New Mexico Child Protective Services. I've been assigned to Bryn Finnegan's case. I need to speak with you immediately regarding an emergency custody motion filed by Travis Finnegan this morning. Marlowe's hand tightened on Declan's. Her other hand was already dialing. Elspeth answered on the first ring. Scottish accent softened by decades in the Southwest, but still noticeable. Ms. Finnegan, what motion? Travis Finnegan filed an emergency petition claiming that you were involved in a gang-related shooting last night. He's arguing that Bryn is in immediate danger due to your lifestyle and associations. A judge has granted a temporary order. Bryn has been placed in 72-hour emergency foster care pending a hearing. The words hit like bullets, each one finding a target, tearing through Marlowe's carefully constructed defenses. He tried to have me killed, Marlowe said. Voice flat, shock smoothing out the rage. Last night, 2 hired guns, professional hit. The only reason I'm alive is because a homeless boy saw them coming and took a bullet meant for me. Silence on the other end, then carefully. That's a serious allegation. I have the note from the shooter's pocket. Eliminate mother, son inherits estate plus custody of child. That's not an allegation, that's evidence. I need to see that note, and I need a statement. Can you come to my office? I'm at the hospital with the boy who saved my life. He's 11 years old and he almost died because my son decided I was worth more dead than alive. Another pause. Marlowe could hear Elspeth thinking, processing, making calculations about liability and responsibility and how to navigate a situation that had just gotten exponentially more complicated. I'll come to you, Elspeth said finally. Albuquerque Medical Center. Yes. Give me an hour, and Ms. Finnegan, don't leave, don't talk to Travis. Don't do anything that could be construed as aggressive or threatening. The next 72 hours are critical for both cases. The line went dead. Marlowe sat in the silence of the ICU, holding the hand of a boy who'd saved her, thinking about a granddaughter 300 miles away who must be terrified right now, wondering if Bryn understood what was happening, if anyone had explained it in ways that didn't make it sound like abandonment. Her phone rang again. Barrett. We've got a problem, he said without preamble. Another one? News crews just showed up. Someone tipped them about 900 bikers gathering at a hospital. They're already spinning narratives about gang activity. This could hurt you in court. Marlowe closed her eyes, tried to think through the exhaustion and the fear and the rage. Tell everyone to stand down, clear out. Last thing I need is footage of the Hells Angels looking like an occupying army. You sure we came here for the kid, for you? I know, and I'm grateful. But right now, the best thing you can do is make sure this doesn't turn into a media circus that gives Travis ammunition. Barrett was quiet for a moment. All right, we'll roll out. But Marlo, this isn't over. The sacred promise doesn't expire just because it's inconvenient. That boy's under our protection now. And so are you. Travis comes at either of you again, he comes through all of us. Thank you, Marlo said, meant it with every fiber of her being. She hung up, looked at Declan, still unconscious, still fighting, still alive against all odds. Looks like we're in this together now, she told him. You saved me. I'm saving you back. And somehow we're going to save Bryn, because that's what people do when they give a damn. Outside the window, the sun was fully up now. A new day, full of problems that yesterday hadn't contained, but also full of possibilities that yesterday hadn't offered. Marlo Finnegan had survived 58 years by being tougher than whatever tried to break her. She'd survived an abusive marriage, widowhood, watching her son destroy himself, fighting for custody of a granddaughter she loved more than her own life. Now she had a new fight, multiple fronts, legal battles and custody hearings, and a son who wanted her dead. But she also had something Travis didn't. She had a reason that went deeper than money or inheritance or whatever motivated people who could hire hitmen to kill their own mothers. She had Bryn, and now she had Declan, two kids who needed someone to finally step in, to stand between them and the cruelty of a world that chewed up the vulnerable and spit them out. Her phone buzzed one more time. Text message from an unknown number. Just 3 words. 48 hours. Decide. No signature. Didn't need one. Marlo knew exactly who it was from. Vincent Krause, the man who'd been hired to kill her and had failed. Now giving her an ultimatum. Drop the custody case or he'd finish the job. And this time he'd make sure Bryn was watching. Marlo looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Not because she was afraid, because she was done being afraid. Done letting bullies and addicts and hired killers dictate her choices. She'd spent 3 years fighting for Bryn through official channels, playing by rules that kept changing, trying to prove to judges and social workers that she was respectable enough, stable enough, safe enough to raise her own granddaughter. Maybe it was time to stop playing by their rules. Maybe it was time to remind everyone exactly who Marlo Finnegan was before the vest and the bike and the brotherhood, before the courtrooms and the custody battles. A mother who would burn the world down before she let anyone hurt her child or her children. Because that's what Declan was now, whether biological or not. The moment he'd taken that bullet, he'd become family. And Marlo protected family, no matter what it cost. She stood, kissed Declan's forehead. Rest. Heal. When you wake up, I'll be here. And we're going to show them what happens when you underestimate people who've got nothing left to lose except each other. Then she walked out of the ICU, past the nurses, through the waiting room, into the parking lot where 927 motorcycles were starting to clear out, engines rumbling to life, a controlled exodus that still managed to make the ground shake. Barrett waited by his bike, saw her coming, read her face. What do you need information, Marlo said. Everything you can find on Vincent Krause, where he operates, who hired him, what Travis promised him, and I need it fast. I've got 72 hours before a judge decides if Bryn goes back to a man who wants me dead. That's not enough time to play defense. Barrett's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like the expression a wolf made before it stopped running and turned to fight. Offense it is then. I'll make calls. We'll find him. And Barrett? When we do, I want to talk to him. Alone. That's not protocol. The oath means we handle threats together. I know, but this is personal. Travis is my son, my failure, my responsibility to fix. The Brotherhood backs me. But this confrontation, that's mine. Barrett studied her, saw whatever he needed to see, nodded once. All right. But you're wired, and we're close. Anything goes sideways, we're there in 30 seconds. Deal. Marlo climbed onto her Harley, felt the familiar weight of the bike beneath her. Kicked it to life. The engine's growl was a physical thing. Vibration traveling through steel and leather and bone, grounding her, reminding her who she was when everything else was chaos. She had 72 hours, 3 days to find a hitman, flip him, get evidence that would bury Travis. Prove to a social worker and a judge that she wasn't the problem, that she was the solution. 3 days to save a boy who'd already saved her, to save a granddaughter who shouldn't have to choose between a grandmother who loved her and a father who saw her as currency. 3 days to prove that sometimes the scary people in leather vests were exactly the heroes the story needed. Marlowe twisted the throttle. The Harley surged forward, carrying her away from the hospital, away from the wife fighting for his life in the ICU, toward answers, toward confrontation, toward whatever came next. Behind her, the sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the night, promising a day full of violence or redemption, or maybe both at once. And somewhere 300 miles away, a 7-year-old girl named Bryn was waking up in a stranger's house, wondering where her grandmother was, if she'd been forgotten, if the promises of safety had been lies all along. Hold on, baby Marlowe thought. Grandma's coming, and I'm bringing an army. Declan woke to pain, not the sharp kind from the bullet. That had settled into a deep grinding ache that pulsed with every heartbeat. This was different. The pain of realizing he was still alive when he'd been certain he wouldn't be. White ceiling, beeping machines, chemical smell of antiseptic, the weight of blankets that were actually clean. He tried to sit up and his body screamed protest loud enough that he stopped moving immediately. Easy, Marlowe's voice came from somewhere to his left. You've got stitches and staples holding you together. Sudden movements are a bad idea. He turned his head slowly. She was sitting in a chair beside his bed, still wearing the leather vest, hair pulled back, eyes shadowed with exhaustion but sharp and focused. She looked like she'd been there for hours, maybe days. How long? His voice came out scratchy, throat raw from intubation he didn't remember. 36 hours since surgery. You've been in and out, mostly out. She leaned forward. How much do you remember fragments? The gun, the running, the impact of the bullet, Marlowe's hands pressing into his side, the ambulance. Everything after that was fog and fever dreams. Enough. The doctors say you're going to make it. Tough kid. Something shifted in her expression, softened slightly. You had 927 people show up to make sure you didn't wake up alone. Declan blinked, tried to process that number. Failed. Why? Because I called in a sacred promise. Because you saved my life. Because in my world that matters. She paused. Let that settle. But we've got problems, both of us, and I need your help. He should have said no, should have thanked her for whatever she'd done and found a way to disappear back into the margins where he belonged. Getting involved with Hell's Angels grandmother drama wasn't smart, wasn't safe, wasn't his business. But Lennon's face flickered in his mind, and the memory of 3 years spent paralyzed while the world hurt people he was supposed to protect, and the feeling of finally moving when it mattered, even if it nearly killed him. What kind of problems? Marlowe told him. All of it. Travis trying to have her killed, Bryn in foster care, the 72-hour deadline that had already burned through most of its time. Vincent Krauss still out there. The custody battle that would decide if a 7-year-old girl grew up with a grandmother who loved her or a father who saw her as a payday. When she finished, Declan was quiet for a long moment, processing, thinking through angles the way you learned to when survival depended on seeing problems before they saw you. You need evidence, he said finally. Video, audio, something that proves Travis hired the hit. Court won't take your word against his. That's where you come in. Marlowe's eyes locked on his. You spent 3 months a ghost, moving through the world like you weren't there. I need those skills. I need someone who can get close to Travis without him noticing. Someone who can document what he's planning next. You want me to spy on him. I want you to help me save Bryn, and in the process maybe save yourself. She pulled out her phone, showed him a photo, little girl with auburn hair and a gap-toothed smile. This is my granddaughter. She's 7. Right now she's with strangers wondering if I abandon her. Every hour that passes, she loses a little more faith that adults keep promises. I can't let that continue. But I also can't do this alone. Declan looked at the photo, saw Lennon's face superimposed over Bryn's. Different features, same age, same innocence that the world was working hard to extinguish. If I help you, he said slowly, you help me find my sister. Marlowe didn't hesitate. Yes. And if your son realizes I'm following him, if Vincent Krause figures out I'm not just some random street kid, then I make sure they go through me first. That's what the sacred bond means. You're under protection now. Full weight of the brotherhood. Anyone touches you, they answer to all of us. It should have sounded like an empty promise, the kind adults made when they wanted something and forgot the second it was convenient. But Marlo said it like a contract written in something more permanent than ink, like she understood that breaking this would break something fundamental in herself. Okay, Declan said, tell me what you need. Barrett arrived an hour later with a woman Declan had never seen before. Mid-40s, red hair shot through with silver, tattoos visible on both forearms, leather vest with patches that marked her as Arizona chapter. She moved with the careful precision of someone who'd spent time in the military or prison, or somewhere else that taught you to be aware of every exit. This is Arizona Quinn, Marlo said, tech specialist. If it's got a circuit board or a signal, she can make it do things it wasn't designed for. Quinn pulled up a chair, studied Declan with eyes that missed nothing. Heard you took a bullet for Diesel here. That true Diesel by road name, Marlo explained. Real name's Marlo, but on the bike, I'm Diesel. Quinn nodded like that made perfect sense. Road names are earned. Diesel earned hers by riding 400 miles through a sandstorm to get to her husband before the cancer killed him. Made it with 20 minutes to spare. She paused. You earned something too, taking that bullet. But you don't get a name until you're patched. Until then, you're just Kid or Declan, depending on who's talking. I don't want a patch. Didn't say you did, then. But you've got protection, whether you want it or not. The oath's not optional. Quinn pulled out a laptop. Now, let's talk about how we're going to nail Travis Finnegan to the wall he's trying to push his mother off of. She laid out the plan with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Surveillance equipment, small cameras that look like pen caps, audio recorders built into phone cases, GPS trackers no bigger than a matchbook. Everything available through channels that probably weren't entirely legal, but definitely worked. Travis is predictable, Quinn said, pulling up files. Creature of habit. Meets his dealer every Tuesday and Friday at a bar called the Dusty Rose. Meets with his lawyer Wednesday mornings. Spends Thursday nights at his girlfriend's place in the South Valley. How do you know all this? Declan asked. Because I've been watching him since Diesel called the oath. Due diligence. Know your enemy before you engage. Quinn's smile was sharp. Travis thinks he's smart, thinks hiring professionals means he's insulated, but he's sloppy. Meets Vincent Krause in public places, pays him through a shell company that's registered to his girlfriend's name. Amateur hour. Marlo leaned forward. Can we prove the connection? Not yet, but that's where your boy comes in. Quinn looked at Declan. You follow Travis. Document meetings. Record conversations. Get close enough to hear, but not so close he notices. Think you can do that? Declan thought about 3 months on the street, about learning to be furniture, background noise, the kind of presence people's eyes slid over without registering. Yeah, I can do that. Good, because we've got less than 48 hours before Travis's lawyer files another motion to make the foster placement permanent. We need evidence before that hearing, or Bryn's going to end up with a father who sees her as currency. They spent the next hour planning. Routes, schedules, backup protocols. Quinn insisted on giving Declan a phone with a panic button that would alert the nearest bikers if things went wrong. Marlo insisted on driving him to and from surveillance locations until his stitches healed enough for him to move independently. One more thing, Barrett said. He'd been quiet through most of the planning. Now he pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside was a patch, not the full Hells Angels insignia, something simpler. Black leather with embroidered text. Under protection. You wear this on your jacket, Barrett said. Visible. Anyone in the life sees it, they know touching you means war. It's not a patch, not membership, but it's a shield. And given what you're about to do, you need one. Declan took the patch, felt the weight of it, heavier than leather and thread should be. Like it carried the mass of 927 people who'd shown up because one of their own said he mattered. I don't have a jacket. Quinn pulled out a worn denim jacket. Looked like it had seen better decades. Now you do? Belonged to my kid brother before he died. Been in storage for 12 years. He was about your size when he wore it. Figure he'd want it protecting someone who gives a damn. The jacket fit. Declan stood while Marlo sewed the patch onto the back, each stitch deliberate, permanent. When she finished, she stepped back and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Looks good," she said quietly, "like you were always supposed to wear it." That afternoon, Declan followed Travis Finnegan for the first time. Marlo dropped him 3 blocks from the Dusty Rose, waited on her bike at the far end of the parking lot, ready to extract him if things turned bad. Travis was easy to spot, 35 but looked 50. Meth and bad decisions had carved him hollow, twitchy movements, sunken eyes. The kind of desperate energy that came from owing money to people who collected debts in pain. He met his dealer in a booth at the back, exchanged an envelope for a small package that disappeared into his jacket. Standard transaction. Nothing useful. But then Vincent Krause walked in. Declan recognized him from Marlo's description. 45. Average height, forgettable face except for the eyes. Cold. Professional. The kind of man who'd learned to turn off the parts of himself that felt empathy. Travis and Vincent talked for 7 minutes. Declan had positioned himself 2 booths away, close enough to hear fragments through Quinn's audio equipment, far enough that he looked like just another kid killing time with a phone he couldn't afford service for. "The old bitch survived," Travis was saying. His voice carried the whine of someone who'd never been told no. "You said it was handled." "The boy complicated things." Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless. "But the job's not finished, just delayed." "How much more?" "Another 20,000, half now, half when it's confirmed." "I don't have that kind of cash." "Then find it or explain to your creditors why you can't pay what you owe. Your choice." Silence. Then Travis, "What about the kid, the one who took the bullet? What about him?" "Could be useful. Leverage. The old woman's protecting him. Means she cares, means we can use him to make her do what we want." Declan's blood went cold. Vincent considered this. "Risky. Kidnapping draws attention, but it could work. Give me 24 hours. I'll put something together." They left separately. Travis first, then Vincent 5 minutes later. Declan waited until they were both gone before triggering the panic button. Marlo appeared in 90 seconds. "What happened?" "They're planning to grab me, use me to force you to drop the custody case." He played back the recording, watched her face go stone. "Get on the bike," she said, voice deadly calm. "We're going to Barrett's now." The clubhouse was a converted warehouse on the industrial edge of Albuquerque, surrounded by chain link and barbed wire. Motorcycles lined up in neat rows outside. Inside, it looked like someone's idea of a working-class living room crossed with an armory. Pool table, bar, couches that had seen better decades, and along the walls enough firepower to start a small war. Barrett was waiting with 15 other bikers, mix of men and women, all ages, and all wearing the same expression of controlled violence. People who'd been called to protect one of their own and were ready to do whatever that required. Marlo played the recording, let them hear Travis and Vincent planning to use Declan as leverage. When it finished, the silence was heavy enough to crush. "Well," Barrett said finally, "that simplifies things. They come for the kid. We've got justification to end this permanently." "No." Marlo's voice cut through the rising murmur of agreement. "We do this smart, legal. We use this recording as evidence. Give it to the police. Let the system handle it." "The system," one of the bikers, older man with a scar bisecting his face, spoke up. "The system that put a 7-year-old with her junkie father in the first place. That system. The system that's watching us right now, looking for an excuse to label us terrorists and take Bryn away permanently." Marlo met his eyes. "I want Travis gone too, but not if it means losing Bryn in the process. We play this smart or we don't play at all." Barrett nodded slowly. "She's right. We go in hot. We prove every stereotype they've got about us. We go in smart. We prove we're better than they think." "So what's the play?" Quinn asked. "We let them try to grab Declan." Marlo's words dropped like stones. "But we control the situation. Wire him, track him, have people ready to intervene, and we record everything. Get Vincent on camera admitting to the attempted murder. Get Travis on camera ordering it. Package it all up for the DA with a bow. You're using the kid as bait." Barrett's tone was neutral, statement not judgment. I'm giving him a choice. Marlowe looked at Declan. You don't have to do this. We can hide you, keep you safe until the hearing. But if you are willing to help, we can end this, permanently. Declan thought about Lennon, about 3 years of running, about the difference between being safe and being free, about a 7-year-old girl named Bryn who deserved better than a father who saw her as currency. I'll do it, he said, but I want something in return. Name it. Help me find Lennon. Get her out of whatever placement she's in. Give her the same protection you're giving me. Marlowe didn't hesitate. Done. Quinn, start the search. I want Lennon's current location and placement records by tonight. Quinn was already typing. On it. They spent the next 6 hours preparing. Quinn fitted Declan with a wire so small it looked like a shirt button. GPS tracker sewn into his jacket lining. Panic button wristband disguised as a charity bracelet. Every piece of technology designed to be undetectable but functional. Barrett positioned his people. Surveillance teams on rotating shifts. Watchers on rooftops. Riders ready to mobilize in under 2 minutes. A net of protection so comprehensive that Vincent would have to go through an army to get to Declan. And through it all, Marlowe stayed close, making sure Declan understood the risks, making sure he knew he could back out, making sure he felt the weight of 927 people who decided he was worth protecting. Night fell. Declan sat in the clubhouse surrounded by strangers who treated him like family, who brought him food and made sure he took his pain medication and talked to him like his opinion mattered. Quinn found him around 10, pulled up a chair. Got your sister's location. Declan's heart stopped. Where? Santa Fe, foster home run by a woman named Margaret Brennan. Been there 4 months. Before that, she was in 6 different placements in 3 years. Files say she's got attachment issues and behavioral problems. Quinn's expression softened, which is social worker code for she's traumatized and nobody wants to deal with it. Is she safe? Physically, yeah, Brennan's got a clean record, no abuse flags. But Lennon's been moved so many times she stopped trying to bond. Keeps to herself. Doesn't talk much. Classic survival strategy for kids who've learned that getting attached means getting hurt. Declan knew that strategy, lived it himself. Can I see her, my boyfriend? Not yet. You're a minor without legal guardianship. Showing up would trigger all kinds of alarms. But after this is done, after we nail Travis and get Marlowe's custody situation handled, we'll make it happen. That's the deal. You help us, we help you. And if something goes wrong, if Vincent grabs me and it goes sideways, Quinn's eyes went hard, then we burn his world down and make sure everyone knows what happens when you touch someone under our protection. But it won't go sideways. We're too good at this. The confidence should have felt like bravado. Instead, it felt like fact. These people had been executing operations like this for longer than Declan had been alive. They knew violence, knew strategy, knew how to protect their own, even when their own was a homeless kid who'd stumbled into their world by accident. Marlowe's phone rang at midnight. She answered, listened. Her expression shifted from neutral to ice. That was Elspeth Magruder, she said when she hung up. Travis's lawyer filed another emergency motion. They've got photos from the hospital. 927 bikers, quote, occupying a medical facility in a show of force. They're using it as evidence that I'm dangerous. That my associations put Bryn at risk. That was an honor guard, Barrett growled. Those were our people showing respect for the oath. I know that. You know that. But to a judge who's never set foot in our world, it looks like gang activity. It looks like exactly what Travis's lawyer wants it to look like. Marlowe's hands curled into fists. The hearing's been moved up, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We don't have the evidence yet, Quinn said. Vincent hasn't made his move on Declan. Then we make him move tonight. Marlowe looked at Barrett. Can you leak Declan's location? Make it look like he's vulnerable? That's accelerating the timeline. Risky. Everything about this is risky, but I'm not walking into that courtroom tomorrow with nothing but my word against Travis's lawyer. I need proof, and I need it now. Barrett pulled out his phone, made 3 calls, each one brief, cryptic. When he finished, he looked at Declan. In 1 hour, every low-level dealer and informant in the city is going to know that you're staying in a motel on Central. Room 117, alone. No protection except one biker on watch who's bad at his job. Will Vincent bite? If he's smart, no. If he's desperate and on a deadline, yeah, he'll bite. Barrett's expression was grim. But you need to understand, this goes hot, people could die. We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe. But there are no guarantees in this kind of work. Declan thought about the bullet, about the moment when he decided that dying loud was better than living silent, about Lennon and Bryn and all the kids who needed someone to finally step in. I'm sure, he said. They moved him to the motel at 1 a.m., rundown place on Central Avenue where the rooms rented by the hour and nobody asked questions. Quinn had rigged room 117 with enough surveillance equipment to film a documentary. Cameras in the smoke detector, microphones in the lamp, audio pickups sensitive enough to catch whispers. The biker on watch was a woman named Scarlett, 50s, built like she'd spent her life lifting motorcycles. She positioned herself in the parking lot with a sight line to the door and instructions to look bored and distracted. You see Vincent coming, you hit the panic button, she told Declan. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to fight. You're bait. Let us do the catching. Inside the room, Declan sat on a bed that smelled like cigarettes and despair. Wore the wire Quinn had given him. Kept the panic button within reach. Waited for violence to find him one more time. He didn't have to wait long, 2 a.m. The door exploded inward, not picked, not carefully opened, kicked hard enough to splinter the frame. Vincent Krause came through like violence personified. Gun drawn, eyes scanning, professional. He saw Declan, saw the panic in his face that wasn't entirely acting, smiled without warmth. Nothing personal, kid. Wrong place, wrong time. You've got value and I've got debts. That's all this is. Declan's hand moved toward the panic button. Vincent crossed the room faster than seemed possible. Grabbed his wrist, squeezed until Declan cried out. The button clattered to the floor. Nice try, but I've been doing this long enough to recognize a setup. Vincent pulled out zip ties, secured Declan's wrists behind his back with efficiency that spoke of practice. Your biker friend's outside already handled. You're coming with me. And if you scream, I'll make sure it's the last sound you make. He dragged Declan out of the room, into the parking lot where Scarlett was on the ground. Not dead, breathing but unconscious. Cable ties around her wrists and ankles. A white van waited with engine running. Vincent shoved Declan inside, slammed the doors. The vehicle lurched forward. Through the wire hidden in his jacket, Declan heard Quinn's voice. Calm, steady. We've got him tracked. Units are moving. 2 minutes. Stay calm. But Vincent was already pulling out his phone, typing a message, showing it to Declan. Tell Marlowe she's got 6 hours. Drop the custody case. Tell the judge she's unfit. Give Travis what he wants. Or I kill you and leave your body where she'll find it. Understand? Declan nodded. Fear wasn't acting anymore. This was real. Vincent was professional enough to do exactly what he threatened. The van drove for 3 minutes. Stopped in an industrial area. Warehouse district. Empty at this hour. Vincent dragged Declan out, into a building that echoed with their footsteps. Concrete floor, metal walls, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. He tied Declan to a support pillar, checked the bindings, then stepped back and made a call. It's done, he said. I've got the kid. Send the message to Marlowe. 6 hours or he's dead. A pause. Travis's voice came through the speaker, loud enough that the wire would pick it up. Make sure she knows you're serious. Hurt him a little. Send proof. That wasn't the deal. The deal changed. I want her broken. I want her to know that going against me costs. Do it. Vincent looked at Declan. Something flickered in his expression. Not quite hesitation, not quite regret, but close. I'll handle it. You just make sure the money's ready when this is done. He hung up, stared at his phone for a long moment, then at Declan. How old are you, kid? 11. You got family. Sister, foster care. Vincent nodded slowly. I had a daughter, Vanessa. She was 9 when she died. Drive-by shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. Just like you. He paused. I spent 12 years trying to make someone pay for that. Tried to fill the hole with violence and anger and jobs like this one. Didn't work. Just made the hole bigger. Then why are you doing this? Because I'm good at it. Because people pay me. Because I convinced myself that if I couldn't save my daughter, at least I could make money off other people's pain. He looked at the gun in his hand. But you know what's funny? The man who hired me to kill your friend, to kill Marlo, he's a father too. Got a 7-year-old daughter he's trying to take custody of. Not because he loves her, because she's worth money. Bryn, Declan said. Yeah, Bryn. Vincent's jaw tightened. And I was about to help him do it. Was about to kill a grandmother who's fighting to protect a little girl from a father who sees her as currency. Was about to do to Bryn what someone did to Vanessa. Take away the person who loves her most. The warehouse door exploded inward. Not kicked, blown off its hinges by a shaped charge that turned metal into shrapnel. 15 bikers poured through the gap, weapons drawn, moving with military precision. Marlo walked in last, unarmed, calm. She looked at Vincent holding a gun, at Declan tied to the pillar, at the situation that could turn lethal in seconds. Let him go, she said, not a request. A statement of fact about what was going to happen next. Vincent didn't lower the gun, didn't raise it either. Just stood there, caught between the gun and something that looked like conscience finally waking up. You were paid to kill a grandmother, Marlo continued. Voice steady, cutting through the tension. Look at this boy. He lost his sister because nobody stepped in when it mattered. You lost your daughter to violence. How many more children lose people before you say enough? I say enough and Travis finds someone else. Someone who won't hesitate. Someone who will kill you and probably the kid too, just to tie up loose ends. Then testify. Give us Travis. Trade what you know for a deal. Let the system put him where he belongs instead of letting him hurt more kids. Vincent laughed. Bitter sound. You think the system cares? The system failed my daughter. Failed your granddaughter. Failed this kid tied to a post. Why would it suddenly start working now? Because we make it work. Because we give them evidence they can't ignore. Because sometimes the system doesn't save us, but we can use it as a weapon if we're smart enough. Marlo took a step closer. I'm not asking you to trust the system. I'm asking you to trust that a father who will pay to murder his own mother doesn't deserve custody of a 7-year-old girl. That we can stop him if we work together. Silence. Vincent looked at Declan, at Marlo, at the 15 bikers ready to end him if he made the wrong choice. Then he lowered the gun, set it on the ground, raised his hands. All right, he said quietly. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. But I want a deal. And I want to know the kid's going to be okay. The kid's under sworn protection. He's going to be more than okay. Marlo moved past him, started cutting Declan's bindings. As for the deal, that's between you and the DA. But I'll put in a word. Tell them you chose the right side when it mattered. She got Declan free, checked him for injuries, found none beyond fear and adrenaline crash, pulled him into a brief, fierce hug. You did good. Recording's clear. We got Travis ordering Vincent to hurt you. We got Vincent admitting to the murder for hire. We got everything we need. Brent, hearings in 7 hours. We give this to the police and the DA right now. Rush the charges. Have Travis in custody before the judge takes the bench. No way they give custody to a man facing attempted murder charges. Barrett approached Vincent. Zip ties ready. You're coming with us. Protective custody until you testify. Try to run, we find you. Try to warn Travis, we make sure you regret it. Clear. Vincent nodded, let himself be secured, let them lead him out to the waiting vehicles. Dawn was starting to break, pink and gold on the horizon. Declan sat in Marlo's truck, watched the sunrise and tried to process everything that had just happened. He'd been kidnapped, nearly killed, saved by an army of bikers who barely knew him. And somewhere in Santa Fe, Lennon was waking up in another stranger's house, still waiting for someone to keep a promise. Quinn found your sister, Marlo said quietly, reading his thoughts. After the hearing, after we get Bryn back, we go to Santa Fe. We bring Lennon into this protection. We make sure she knows she's not forgotten. You promise, Marlo looked at him, eyes serious. I promise, and unlike most adults you've known, I keep my word. The oath goes both ways. You save me, I save you back. That includes your sister. They drove to the police station, handed over recordings and evidence, and Vincent Krause himself watched detectives move fast once they understood what they were looking at. watched warrants being drafted, watched the machinery of law enforcement grind to life when you gave it something it couldn't ignore. Travis Finnegan was arrested at 6 a.m. in his girlfriend's bed, still high from the night before. Didn't even realize what was happening until they had him in handcuffs reading Miranda rights. The DA filed charges by 7:30. Conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, child endangerment, kidnapping. A list of felonies that would put Travis away for decades if they stuck. At 8:45, Marlowe walked into family court with Quinn and Barrett, with evidence packets, with Vincent Krause's sworn statement, with everything she needed to prove that Travis Finnegan was exactly the monster she'd claimed he was. The judge took one look at the police reports, at the charges filed that morning, at the recording of Travis ordering violence against a child. Mr. Finnegan's petition for custody is denied, the judge said, voice clipped. Professional outrage barely contained. Ms. Finnegan, you are granted full custody of Bryn Finnegan effective immediately. Mr. Finnegan's parental rights are suspended pending criminal proceedings. This court apologizes for any distress this case has caused your family. Marlowe didn't cry, didn't celebrate, just nodded once. Professional, controlled, saving the emotional release for when she wasn't in front of a judge and lawyers and court reporters. Elspeth Magruder met her in the hallway. I'll have Bryn ready for pickup in 2 hours. She's been asking for you every day. Thought you forgot about her. Never, Marlowe said. Tell her grandma's coming, and I'm bringing someone special for her to meet. 2 hours later, Marlowe pulled up to the foster home with Declan in the passenger seat. Bryn ran out before they had even parked. 7 years old and fearless. Launched herself at her grandmother with the kind of trust that children only give to people who've never broken it. Marlowe caught her, held her, let the tears come now that it was just family. I knew you'd come, Bryn whispered. I told them you always keep promises. Always, Marlowe agreed. She set Bryn down gently. There's someone I want you to meet. This is Declan. He's the boy who saved Grandma, and he's going to be staying with us for a while. Bryn looked at Declan with wide eyes, saw the stitches visible at his collar, the way he moved carefully like everything hurt, the jacket with the protection patch on the back. You got hurt saving Grandma. Yeah, Declan said. That was really brave. Your grandma's braver. She saved me back. Bryn considered this, then held out her hand, solemn and formal. Thank you for keeping her safe. I'm Bryn. Declan shook her hand, felt something in his chest crack open, something that had been locked tight for 3 years. I'm Declan, and I've got a sister about your age. Maybe you can meet her soon. I'd like that. They drove back to Marlowe's house, the one Travis had tried to inherit, the one that was now going to hold a grandmother, a granddaughter, and a boy who'd finally found people who kept their promises. Barrett called as they pulled in. Vincent's testimony is solid. DA's offering him 15 years with possibility of parole and 10 if he cooperates fully. He took it. Travis is looking at life without parole. Good, Marlowe said. And Declan's paperwork. Emergency guardianship's already filed. You'll have temporary custody by end of week. Permanent by end of month if all goes well. Kid's legally yours until he ages out or you decide otherwise. Marlowe looked at Declan. You okay with that, living here, being part of this family? Declan thought about the alternatives. The streets, the shelters, the cold and the hunger and the constant fear. Thought about Lennon still waiting in Santa Fe. Thought about the possibility of siblings who protected each other instead of watching each other get hurt. Yeah, he said, I'm okay with it. That night, Marlowe made dinner. Real food. Sit-down meal at an actual table. Bryn talked nonstop about the foster home and the kids she'd met and how scared she'd been, but how she'd known Grandma would come. Declan ate quietly, listened, felt the strangeness of being somewhere warm and safe, of having people who cared if he existed, of mattering. After dinner, Marlowe pulled out her phone, made a call. When she hung up, she looked at Declan. Quinn's making arrangements. Tomorrow we drive to Santa Fe. We bring Lennon home, all of us together. What if she doesn't remember me? It's been 3 years. Then you remind her. You show her that brothers who disappear sometimes come back, that promises broken can be remade. That family isn't just blood. It's who shows up when it matters. Bryn appeared with a blanket and a stuffed bear. handed both to Declan. You can sleep in the spare room. Grandma says you are going to stay. That makes you family. Family shares blankets. Declan took the offerings, felt the weight of 7 years old deciding he belonged. Thank you. That night he slept in a real bed for the first time in months, door locked from the inside because old habits died hard, but warm, fed, protected by an army of bikers who decided he was worth the trouble. And tomorrow he'd see Lennon, would bring her into this circle of protection, would prove that sometimes boys who couldn't move learned to run, that sometimes screaming into darkness brought help, that sometimes the scary people in leather vests were exactly the family you needed. Marlo sat in her own room, Bryn asleep down the hall, Declan in the spare room. Her phone showed a text from Barrett. Travis's lawyer is talking plea deal. Looks like he's flipping on his client. This is over. She typed back. It's never over, but we won today. That's enough. She looked at the photo on her nightstand. Her late husband, young and healthy before the cancer. He'd made her promise to take care of Bryn no matter what, to make sure Travis's mistakes didn't destroy another generation. Promise kept. Promise expanded to include a boy who'd saved her life and a sister who needed saving. Family growing in unexpected directions. Marlo turned off the light, let exhaustion pull her under. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal paperwork, healing wounds, trauma that didn't disappear just because the immediate danger passed. But tomorrow would also bring Lennon, would bring a family reunited, would bring proof that sworn oaths meant something real and lasting. For tonight, that was enough. The drive to Santa Fe took 2 hours. Marlo behind the wheel, Declan in the passenger seat trying not to shake. Bryn in the back asking questions that nobody had good answers for. What if Lennon doesn't like me? Bryn's voice was small. 7 years old trying to understand the complicated mathematics of broken families reassembling themselves into new configurations. She'll like you, Declan said. More hope than certainty. He hadn't seen his sister in 3 years. Didn't know what foster care had done to her. Didn't know if she'd forgiven him for disappearing, for leaving her behind when the social worker took her to strangers and he went back to Garrett's fists. Marlo glanced at him, read the tension in his shoulders. Quinn talked to Lennon's current foster mother, told her you were coming. Lennon's been packed since yesterday morning, sitting by the window waiting. She remembers me. She's been waiting for you for 3 years. Kids don't forget that kind of thing. The house was in a quiet neighborhood where lawns stayed trimmed and houses painted. Middle-class normal, the kind of place that looked safe from the outside and sometimes was. Margaret Brennan met them at the door. 60-something with kind eyes and the careful wariness of someone who'd fostered enough kids to know that love wasn't always enough to fix what the world broke. She's upstairs, Margaret said. Been nervous all morning. Kept asking if you were real, if this was another false promise. Declan's chest tightened. Can I see her? Go ahead. Second door on the right. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like walking towards something that could shatter him or rebuild him, depending on what happened in the next 5 minutes. The door was half open. He knocked anyway, gentle, giving her time to prepare. Come in. The voice hit him like a physical blow. 3 years older, but still Lennon, still his sister. He pushed the door open. She was sitting on the bed. 11 years old now, hair longer than he remembered, eyes harder, wearing clothes that fit but looked temporary, like she'd learned not to get attached to anything including fabric. A small backpack sat at her feet, everything she owned compressed into one bag, ready to move again because moving was what foster kids did. They looked at each other. Brother and sister separated by 3 years and 1,000 miles of trauma. Neither sure how to bridge the gap. You got tall, Lennon said finally. You got old, Declan replied. A smile flickered across her face. Brief, like she'd forgotten how and had to relearn the muscle memory. You said you'd come back for me. I know, I'm sorry it took so long. 3 years isn't long, it's forever. No accusation in her voice, just fact. The truth that time moved differently for children. That promises broken age into scars. I couldn't before, but I can now, and I'm not leaving without you. Lennon studied him, saw the stitches still visible at his collar, the way he moved like everything hurt. the protection patch on his jacket. Quinn said you got shot. Said you saved someone's grandmother. Yeah. Why? The question was bigger than the words. Why risk yourself? Why care about strangers? Why do something that could get you killed when nobody ever did the same for us? Because I was tired of standing still, Declan said. Tired of watching bad things happen and doing nothing. Tired of being the kid who stood in the kitchen while Garrett beat Mom and didn't move. I wanted to do something right for once. Did it work? Are you different now? I don't know, but I've got people now. A grandmother who keeps promises, a little girl who needs protecting, bikers who decided I matter. He paused. And a sister who I've been looking for since the day they took you away. If you'll come with me. Lennon picked up the backpack, held it like a shield. Where Albuquerque? Marlowe's house. It's got a spare room. And she's got emergency guardianship papers for both of us. We'd be together. Actual family. Not just blood, but choice. What if it doesn't work? What if she decides we're too much trouble and sends us back? Declan understood the fear, had felt it himself, still felt it sometimes in the quiet moments when his brain insisted this was all temporary. That permanence was a lie adults told before they changed their minds. Then we figure it out together, but Marlowe's not like the others. She called in something called the sacred oath. 927 bikers showed up because I took a bullet for her. That's the kind of people she knows, the kind who keep their word even when it's hard. Lennon stood, slowly, testing. Is Bryn nice? Yeah, she's 7, talks a lot, shares blankets, thinks brothers who save grandmothers are heroes. You're not a hero. I know, but maybe I can be a brother who doesn't freeze next time. They went downstairs together. Lennon moving with the careful control of someone who'd learned that showing excitement led to disappointment. But when she saw Bryn waiting by the door, something shifted. 7-year-old innocence meeting 11-year-old caution. Bryn smiled, wide and genuine and completely unaware that some people needed time to trust smiles. Your Lennon Declan talks about you all the time. I'm Bryn. Do you like motorcycles because Grandma has one? And it's really loud, but also really cool. And maybe she'll let us ride sometime if we ask nice. Lennon blinked, processed the verbal avalanche, looked at Declan for translation. She's always like this, he said. I like motorcycles, Lennon said quietly. Never been on one. Then we'll fix that, Marlowe said, stepping forward, not crowding, giving Lennon space. I'm Marlowe, diesel on the road. I've got a house with 2 spare rooms and a kitchen that actually has food. No promises except this. You're under protection now. Same as Declan. Same as Bryn. Nobody touches you without going through us first. Us? 927 of us? Give or take? Depends on the day. Marlowe's mouth curved. It's a lot to explain, but short version is you matter now, both of you, and we don't let go of people who matter. Margaret appeared with paperwork, emergency placement transfer, temporary guardianship, signatures, and official stamps that transformed Lennon from foster kid to family. She handed Marlowe a folder. Her medical records, school transcripts, therapy notes. She's been through 6 placements in 3 years. Each move made it harder for her to trust. She'll test you, push boundaries, see if you'll give up, like the others. I won't, Marlowe said. Everyone says that. I'm not everyone. They drove back to Albuquerque with 2 kids in the back seat. Bryn filled the silence with chatter about school and friends and the motorcycle rides Grandma promised. Lennon listened, occasionally nodded, didn't speak. Just watched the desert roll past and tried to believe that this time might be different. Declan watched his sister in the rearview mirror, saw the walls she'd built, recognized them because he'd built the same ones, knew that tearing them down would take time and patience and proof that adults could keep promises longer than a week. The house felt different with 4 people in it, fuller, louder, more complicated. Marlowe showed Lennon her room, plain walls, empty dresser, clean sheets. Nothing personal because personal meant the last kid in foster families learned not to keep reminders of the children who moved through. You can decorate however you want, Marlowe said. Paint the walls, hang posters, make it yours. You're not a guest. You live here now. Lennon set her backpack on the bed, didn't unpack. How long? As long as you want. I've filed for permanent guardianship. If it goes through, you're stuck with me until you're 18. Unless you decide you want out. People always say permanent, then something changes. Yeah, they do. Marlo sat on the edge of the bed, careful, non-threatening. I'm not going to lie and say nothing will ever go wrong. Can't promise perfect. But I can promise I won't quit on you. Won't send you back because you're difficult or traumatized or too much work. You're Declan's sister. He saved my life. That makes you family, by extension. That's a weird reason to want kids. Most reasons people want kids are weird if you think about them too hard. Marlo stood. Dinner's at 6. Declan knows where the kitchen is. If you need anything, ask. If you need space, take it. No rules except don't hurt yourself or others. Everything else we figure out as we go. She left, gave Lennon privacy to process, to decide if unpacking that backpack meant hope or another setup for disappointment. Declan found her an hour later, still sitting on the bed, backpack unopened. You don't have to unpack, he said. Not until you're ready. What if I'm never ready? Then you live out of a backpack, but at least you'll live here while you do it. Lennon looked at him, really looked. Saw the stitches, the careful way he moved, the protection patch that marked him as belonging somewhere. Did it hurt? Getting shot? Yeah. Was it worth it? Declan thought about that, about Marlo and Bryn and 927 bikers who decided he mattered, about having a room and food and people who kept checking to make sure he was okay, about sitting here with his sister for the first time in 3 years. Yeah, he said, it was worth it. Dinner was awkward the way new families always were. Too much politeness, too much trying. Bryn filled the gaps with stories. Marlo asked careful questions. Lennon gave one-word answers and picked at her food like she wasn't sure it was safe to trust. But she ate. And when Marlo said there was dessert, Lennon's eyes widened slightly. Like maybe this house had rules she didn't know yet. Rules that included unexpected kindness. That night, Declan heard crying through the wall. Soft, muffled. The sound of someone who'd learned to grieve quietly so foster parents didn't get annoyed. He knocked on Lennon's door. Waited. Go away. He opened it anyway. Found her curled on the bed, still in clothes, backpack clutched like a security blanket. I used to cry every night for the first month, he said. After they took you, after I ran from Garrett. Thought if I cried enough, it would change something, make someone care. Didn't work. So why are you telling me this? Because eventually I stopped crying, stopped feeling, went numb because numb was safer than hope. But then I met Marlo and Bryn and people who decided I was worth protecting. And it hurt, feeling again, hoping again. Worse than the bullet in some ways. Lennon sat up, wiped her eyes. Does it get easier? I don't know. It's only been a week for me. Declan sat on the edge of the bed. But we're doing it together this time. That's got to count for something. She leaned against him. Small gesture, huge meaning. Brother and sister reunited by violence and bikers and a grandmother who'd decided that sacred obligations extended to siblings. They sat in the quiet, not fixing anything, just being present, just proving that this time neither of them was alone. 6 months passed like weather, some days clear, some stormy, the kind of time that healed and scarred simultaneously. Declan's stitches came out. The wound became a scar, permanent reminder of the night he'd stopped being a ghost. He worked at Barrett's garage 3 days a week, learning mechanics, learning that his hands could build instead of just survive, learning what it meant to have people who cared if he showed up. Lennon struggled, tested boundaries like Margaret had warned, stayed out past curfew, skipped school, pushed to see if Marlo would crack, would send her back, would prove that permanence was a lie. Marlo didn't crack, didn't yell or threaten or give ultimatums, just stayed steady, consistent, present. When Lennon stayed out until 2 a.m., Marlo stayed up waiting. When she skipped school, Marlo drove her personally the next day. When she screamed that she hated this house and everyone in it, Marlo said okay and made dinner anyway, slowly, incrementally. Lennon's backpack got unpacked, clothes went into the dresser, posters went on the walls. She started eating without watching the door, started laughing at Bryn's stories, started calling Marlo by name instead of her or the woman. Started believing that maybe this time was different. Travis's trial happened in month 4. Declan and Marlowe both testified. Vincent Krause testified for 3 hours, detailed every payment, every plan, every conversation. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before convicting on all counts. Life without parole. Travis would die in prison. Bryn would grow up free of him. The judge made a point of thanking Declan for his courage, for his testimony, for stepping in when adults had failed. Declan nodded, accepted the thanks, didn't say that he'd been terrified every second, that he still had nightmares about the van and the warehouse and Vincent's gun. Some heroism was just fear that moved forward anyway. On a Saturday in late spring, Barrett called. "It's time. Tomorrow, desert outside of town. Be ready at dawn." Marlowe knew what that meant. 6 months since the oath. 6 months of healing and growing and proving that the protection was permanent. Time for the ceremony that would make it official. She told Declan and Lennon that night over dinner, "Tomorrow we're going to meet the Brotherhood. All of them. There's a ceremony, a formal acknowledgement of what happened, what it means." "Do we have to go?" Lennon asked. Still uncomfortable with crowds, with attention, with being seen. "No, but I think you should. This is family now, whether you want it or not." "That's not how family works." "Sure it is. You didn't choose Declan as a brother. You didn't choose me as a guardian. But here we are. Family's not always about choice. Sometimes it's about who shows up when it matters." Dawn came cold and clear. They drove out past the city limits where the desert opened up like an ocean of sand and scrub, where the sky was big enough to swallow sound, where 927 motorcycles could gather without bothering neighbors. They were already there when Marlowe arrived. Bikes in perfect formation, rows upon rows of chrome and leather, men and women standing beside their machines. Some Declan recognized from the hospital, some he'd never seen, all wearing vests with patches from different chapters, different states, different lives unified by the same code. A bonfire burned in the center, large enough to see from miles away. Old tradition, fire as witness, fire as purifier, fire as the element that transformed one thing into another. Barrett stood beside it, wearing his full patch. President insignia, scars and tattoos and eyes that had seen violence and occasionally mercy. He raised one hand and the assembled bikers went silent. 900 voices cutting off mid-conversation. Discipline that would have impressed military units. "Brothers and sisters," Barrett's voice carried without amplification, "we gather to honor a sacred bond. 6 months ago, Marlowe Finnegan called this oath. A boy named Declan Thorne took a bullet meant for her, saved her life, saved her granddaughter's future, did what most men wouldn't, stood when he could have stayed down." He gestured and Marlowe walked forward, leading Declan and Lennon and Bryn. 4 people who'd been assembled by violence and choice into something that looked like family. "In our world," Barrett continued, "these oaths are sacred. They mean someone outside our brotherhood did something so significant they became part of us, that their protection became our responsibility, that their family became our family." He pulled out a patch, black leather, embroidered with a roaring lion's head, gold thread spelling out words, "Grandmother Lion." "Marlowe Finnegan, you were already one of us, but tonight we recognize something more. You didn't just survive an assassination, you turned protection of a homeless boy into protection of his sister. You fought a custody battle and won. You used our strength to shield the vulnerable. That's what this patch means. Not just a fighter, a protector of the next generation." He held the patch out. Marlowe turned. Let him sew it onto her vest. Each stitch deliberate, permanent. When he finished, she faced the assembly. 927 bikers stood in unison, sunglasses removed, hard faces glistening with unashamed tears. Hands rose to chests, to hearts. Silent salute. Acknowledgement that one of their own had done something that transcended personal survival, had extended protection across generations. Then Barrett turned to Declan, pulled out a second patch. Lion's head in silver thread, words underneath, lion heart. Protected. Declan Thorne, 11 years old, homeless, nobody. You saw a gun and screamed. You took a bullet for a stranger. You helped bring down a man who wanted his own mother dead. You reminded us what courage looks like when it's stripped of everything except the choice to move forward. He held out the patch. This means you're under permanent protection. Any chapter, any state, any time. You show this patch and you get help. No questions, no hesitation. It also means you've got responsibilities. To live up to what you did. To protect others the way you were protected. To pass it forward. Declan took the patch, felt the weight. Marlowe helped him turn around, sewed it onto his jacket, the one that had belonged to Quinn's dead brother, now marked with a symbol that meant he mattered, that he'd earned his place in a family 927 strong. The bikers stood again, same salute, same tears. For a boy who'd been nobody and became somebody by refusing to stay silent. Barrett wasn't done. He looked at Lennon and Van, small, uncertain. 11 years old and still learning to trust that this wasn't temporary. Lennon Thorne, sister of the boy who proved courage is contagious. You didn't ask to be here, didn't ask to be part of this, but your brother fought to bring you in. And Marlowe opened her home to you. That makes you family too. He held out a smaller patch. Simple design. Just text. Under protection. Thorne family. This isn't a full patch. You haven't earned that. But it's a shield. Same as your brother's. Same promise. Same protection. You wear this, and the Brotherhood knows you're one of ours. Lennon looked at Declan, at Marlowe, at Bryn standing beside her with absolute confidence that everything happening was good and right and exactly how it should be. She took the patch, let Marlowe sew it onto her jacket, felt the stares of 900 people who decided she was worth protecting before she'd decided they were worth trusting. When it was done, the bikers applauded, not the silent salute, actual noise. Whistles and shouts and the roar of people celebrating survival, celebrating family, celebrating the fact that sometimes the people the world threw away turned out to be exactly who the story needed. Marlowe stepped to the fire, flames painting her face orange and gold, voice carrying across the desert. They tried to kill me to control my granddaughter, to turn a 7-year-old into currency. They thought I'd break. They were wrong. They thought I'd fight alone. They were wrong about that too. She looked at the assembly, at 927 people who'd shown up, because that's what you did when one of your own called. Declan taught me that courage spreads, that one voice screaming in the dark can wake an army. Bryn taught me that children are watching, learning, deciding what kind of adults they'll become based on what we do when it matters. Her voice softened. I'm not just a grandmother anymore. I'm not just a biker. I'm the beginning of something that needs to happen. There are grandparents all over this country raising children because parents can or won't, fighting custody battles, fighting addiction, fighting systems that don't see them as viable. She pulled out a folder, paper she'd been working on for months. I'm creating a program, the Grandmother Lion Project. Legal aid for grandparents in custody battles, safe houses for emergency placements, a network of protection using the Brotherhood's reach. We help others the way we helped ourselves. Barrett stepped forward, took the folder, read the proposal, looked at the assembly. All in favor, 927 hands rose. Unanimous, not because they'd thought about it, because when one of their own had an idea that honored the code, you supported it. No questions, no hesitation. Passed, Barrett said. We'll set it up, fund it, staff it, make it permanent. Marlowe's eyes burned. She blinked hard. Thank you. Don't thank us. This is what we do. We protect. We keep our word. We make sure kids like Declan and Lennon don't fall through cracks that society pretends don't exist. The ceremony ended with food. Mountains of it. Barbecue and beer and enough calories to feed a small army. Because that's what they were. An army assembled around the principle that some debts transcended money, or time, or personal convenience. Bryn ran between bikers, collected stories and nicknames and the kind of attention that comes from being part of something bigger than yourself. Lennon stayed close to Declan, still uncertain, but watching, seeing how these scary people with their leather and their chrome treated each other, treated her, starting to believe that maybe protection was real. Maybe permanence existed. Maybe this time would be different because these people made it their business to be different. As sunset painted the desert golden red, Marlowe found Declan standing alone, watching the bikers, processing. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know what I am." He touched the patch on his jacket. Lionheart, protected. "A week ago I was nobody. Now I'm this." "You were never nobody, just unseen. There's a difference, is there?" Yeah, nobody means you don't matter. Unseen means people aren't looking. We're looking now, all of us. Seeing you, seeing what you did, making sure you know it counted." Declan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What happens now? Now we live. You and Lennon finish school. I keep fighting custody battles for other grandparents. Bryn grows up knowing that family means people who show up. We build something that lasts longer than us. That's simple, that complicated, but we're not doing it alone." 2 years slid past like water, fast and slow simultaneously, the kind of time that accumulated into something recognizable as life. The Grandmother Lion program helped its first family within a month of the ceremony. 70-year-old woman fighting her son for custody of twin granddaughters. Son was dealing meth and using the girls as cover. Woman had no money for lawyers, no protection from retaliation. Marlowe showed up with lawyers funded by the Brotherhood, with bikers who made it clear that threatening grandmothers was a line you didn't cross. The woman got custody, the son got arrested, the twins got stability. Word spread. Quietly at first, then louder. Grandparents fighting impossible battles heard about a program that actually helped, about bikers who protected instead of threatened, about a woman named Diesel who'd taken a bullet metaphorically and literally and decided nobody else should have to. By year one, they'd helped 37 families. By year two, 114. By the time Declan turned 13, the number was 187 grandchildren, kept safe from neglect and abuse, and parents who saw them as burdens or commodities. Declan worked at Barrett's garage full-time now, still in school but apprenticing, learning mechanics and welding and the skills that would give him options when he aged out of the system. Learning that his hands could build things that lasted, that he could be reliable, that showing up mattered. Lennon thrived in ways nobody expected, found art as an outlet, drew pictures of the family that had assembled itself around her. Marlowe on her bike, Bryn with her gap-toothed smile, Declan with his stitches fading but still visible if you knew where to look. The 927 bikers rendered as an ocean of chrome and leather surrounding the people who mattered. Her drawings got noticed. A teacher submitted them to a statewide competition. She won. Prize was a scholarship fund for art school, future opening up in ways that foster care had said weren't possible for kids like her. Bryn turned 9, confident and loud and completely unafraid of the world. Started a junior chapter of the Grandmother Lion Project at her school. Kids helping kids whose grandparents were fighting battles, collecting donations, spreading awareness. 9 years old and already understanding that protection meant action, not just intention. Marlowe watched them grow, watched the program expand, watched the brotherhood prove that sometimes the scary people were exactly who society needed to keep the vulnerable safe. She also watched herself age, 60 now, gray hair going white, joints that complained about long rides. But still riding, still fighting, still showing up for custody hearings and emergency placements, and the endless work of proving that family wasn't always biology. On a Tuesday night in late autumn, she got a call. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then did. "Ms. Finnegan? This is Officer Tamsin McKenzie with Gallup PD. We've got a situation. Elderly woman, 72. Her son's trying to forcibly remove her from her home. He's claiming she's incompetent, wants control of her Social Security and property. She's asking for the Grandmother Lion program. Says she heard you help people like her." Marlowe looked at the clock. 9 p.m., 3-hour drive to Gallup. Early morning meeting tomorrow. 1,000 reasons to say call someone else. "I'll be there in 3 hours," she said instead. "Keep her safe until I arrive." She hung up. Looked at Declan and Lennon doing homework at the kitchen table. At Bryn building something incomprehensible out of Legos. At the family that had assembled itself through violence and choice and the stubborn refusal to let the world break them. "Got a call," she said. "Woman in Gallup needs help. I'm riding out tonight. Declan stood immediately. I'm coming with you. You've got to school tomorrow. And you've got a 3-hour ride alone in the dark. I'm coming. Lennon looked up. Me too. You hate motorcycles. I hate a lot of things. Doesn't mean I let you do them alone. Bryn appeared with her backpack. Road trip. Marlo looked at them. Her assembled family. The kids who'd been broken by the world and rebuilt by people who decided they mattered. Who'd learned that showing up meant more than good intentions. That protection was a verb. All right, she said. Let's go remind someone that they're not alone. They arrived in Gallup at midnight. The house was small. Working-class neighborhood. Lights blazing. Police cruiser in the driveway. Inside, an elderly woman sat on her couch. Gray hair in a bun, flannel nightgown, eyes fierce despite the fear. Her son stood across from her. 40s, well-dressed, lawyer-polished, voice reasonable and patient in the way that made you want to punch him. Mother, you can't live alone anymore. You're a danger to yourself. I've got a facility picked out. Very nice. You'll be comfortable. I'll be a prisoner. You want my house, want my money, just like Travis wanted Marlo's. The son's eyes flicked to Marlo entering, saw the vest, the patches, the 3 kids following hers. His face paled slightly. Who are you, Marlo Finnegan. Grandmother, Lion Program. Mrs. Yazzie called us. This is family business. Then start treating your mother like family instead of an asset. Marlo moved to the couch, sat beside Mrs. Yazzie. You called for help. I'm here. What do you need? A lawyer, witnesses. People who'll stand with me when he tries to take my home. You've got all 3. Marlo pulled out her phone, called Barrett. Put it on speaker. Need you in Gallup. Grandmother Lion situation. How fast can you get people here? 45 minutes. How many? Enough to make a statement. Done. The son was backing toward the door. This is harassment. I'll call my lawyer. Do that, Marlo said. While you're at it, tell him we've got witnesses to you threatening your mother. Tell him we've got connections to legal aid. Tell him that if he tries to proceed with incompetency proceedings, we'll make sure every judge in the state knows he's trying to steal from a 72-year-old woman who just wants to live in her own home. You can't threaten me. Not threatening, promising. There's a difference. He left, slammed the door hard enough to rattle windows. Mrs. Yazzie exhaled, shaking. Thank you. I didn't know what else to do. My friend's daughter read about your program online. Said you help grandmothers who are fighting. We do, and you're not fighting alone anymore. 45 minutes later, 30 motorcycles arrived. Not 900, but enough. They parked in formation on the street. Quiet, visible. A message that Mrs. Yazzie had protection now. That anyone who came for her came through them first. Declan helped Mrs. Yazzie make coffee for the bikers who'd driven through the night. Lennon documented everything with her camera, building a record. Bryn sat with Mrs. Yazzie and talked about school and art and 9-year-old concerns that had nothing to do with sons trying to steal homes. Normalcy, comfort, the kind of presence that said you matter enough for us to show up at midnight. As dawn broke, Marlo stood on Mrs. Yazzie's porch, watched the sun paint the desert gold, felt the weight of nearly 2.5 years of fighting battles for people who'd been overlooked until someone decided to look. Her phone buzzed. Text from Barrett. Programs officially hit 200 families helped. You should be proud. She typed back. We should be proud. This isn't me. It's all of us. But it had started with one boy screaming in the dark. One bullet that should have killed her but instead created a debt that rippled across states and generations. One choice to honor that oath instead of letting it fade. Declan appeared beside her. 13 now, taller, stronger. Scars fading but still visible if you knew where to look. You think it makes a difference what we're doing. I think Mrs. Yazzie isn't alone tonight. I think 187 kids are with grandparents who love them instead of parents who don't. I think we're proving that protection is a choice you can make every day. She looked at him. You made that choice when you screamed. When you took that bullet, everything after is just honoring what you started. I was terrified. Courage usually is. The point isn't being unafraid, it's moving anyway. They stood in the quiet, watching bikers drink coffee and make small talk with a 72-year-old woman who'd called strangers for help and found family instead. Watching Lennon and Bryn make her laugh with stories from school. Watching something impossible become routine. 18 months later, Marlo stood in a different parking lot. Same desert, same quality of light. But this was a truck stop on Interstate 40. Different one from where it all started, but similar enough to trigger memories. She was 59 now, nearly 3 years since Declan had taken that bullet. Nearly 3 years of fighting and building and proving that sacred oaths meant something permanent. Declan was 14, working full-time at Barrett's garage, saving money for technical school. Lennon was 13, art portfolio growing, talking about college like it was possible instead of a fantasy. Bryn was 10, still loud, still fearless, still convinced the world was fundamentally good because the people around her had proven it could be. Marlo was teaching Bryn to ride, small bike, parking lot practice, patient instruction on clutch and throttle, and the balance that kept you upright. Grandmother passing knowledge to granddaughter. Tradition and skill and trust measured in RPMs. Movement caught her eye. Woman at the far end of the lot. Young, maybe 25. Black eye poorly concealed with makeup. Moving with the careful stiffness of someone nursing ribs that hurt to breathe. Watching a dark sedan circle the lot. Predator hunting prey. Marlo killed her engine. Bryn, get Declan and Lennon from the diner, now. Bryn read her grandmother's tone. Didn't argue. Ran. Marlo walked toward the woman, not threatening, not rushing, just approaching with the calm certainty of someone who'd done this before, who'd learned that help meant showing up before violence escalated. The woman saw her coming, tensed, ready to run. My name's Marlo, she said quietly. I used to hide too, from my ex-husband, from a world that told me I deserved what I got. You don't have to anymore. You don't know me. Don't need to. I see the fear. I see him circling. I see you looking for an exit that doesn't exist. But it does exist. Right here. Right now. The dark sedan pulled closer. Window rolled down. Man's voice, angry, possessive. Get in the car, Angela. We're going home. No, Marlo said. Not to Angela, to the man. Voice carrying the weight of 927 people who'd promised to stand with her. She's not going anywhere with you. And if you try to make her, you'll find out why that's a bad idea. The man laughed. You and what army old woman engines rumbled to life. Declan rolled up on his bike. Lennon on hers. Bryn on the back of Marlo's Harley, grinning like this was the best field trip ever. Behind them, more bikes. Arizona Quinn, Barrett, 15 others who'd been stopping for coffee and heard the call. Not 900, but enough. Marlo pulled her phone. Called police. Put it on speaker. This is Marlo Finnegan with the Grandmother Lion program. I'm at the Route 40 truck stop with a woman being threatened by someone in a dark sedan. License plate visible. Need officers here now. She rattled off the plate number. Watched the man's face shift from confidence to calculation. Watched him realize that whatever he'd planned wasn't going to work. Not today. Not with witnesses and bikers and a woman who'd learned that protection meant standing between danger and the vulnerable. He peeled out, tires screaming, gone before police arrived. Angela collapsed against Marlo's bike, shaking. Why did you help me? Because someone helped me once, and I promised to pass it forward. They got Angela to a safe house, got her connected with lawyers and advocates, and the machinery of support that existed if you knew where to look. Got her a patch that said under protection and a phone number that would answer 24/7 if she needed backup. Later, back at the house, Bryn asked the question that had been building. How many people have we helped Grandma? Marlo pulled up the program's database, numbers that had started with one boy and one bullet and grown into something that touched lives across 6 states. 187 children in permanent custody with grandparents. 43 women escaped from domestic violence. 12 men who needed protection from family members trying to steal their assets. 242 lives changed because we decided protection means action. That's a lot. It's not enough, but it's what we can do. And sometimes what you can do is enough. Declan appeared in the doorway, wearing his Lionheart patch, scars barely visible now, eyes that had learned to trust that showing up mattered. Got a call. Kid in Tucson, 14, homeless, says he saw our website, wants to know if the protection's real. Marlo stood. Then we show him it is. Pack a bag, we leave in an hour. It's a 6-hour ride. Yeah, then we better get moving. They rode through the night, desert wind and starlight in the steady thrum of engines carrying them toward another child who needed proof that the world contained people who kept promises, who stepped in, who decided that nobody should be overlooked. The program had grown beyond what Marlo had imagined, beyond one grandmother protecting one granddaughter. It was chapters in 7 states now, network of bikers and advocates and lawyers and social workers who decided that the vulnerable deserved protection from people who understood what it meant to fight. It was Declan teaching homeless kids survival skills and motorcycle maintenance. It was Lennon's artwork raising awareness and funds. It was Bryn starting a program at school where kids helped each other's families. It was Barrett coordinating logistics and Quinn handling technology, and 900 voices saying we're here when someone called for help. It was the legacy of one bullet, one scream, one choice to honor an oath instead of letting it fade. As they rode through the darkness toward Tucson, Marlo thought about the night it all started, about a boy who saw a gun and decided dying loud was better than living silent, about the way courage spread like wildfire when someone was brave enough to strike the first match. She thought about Travis rotting in prison, about Vincent Krause testifying and getting a second chance at redemption, about courtrooms and custody battles and the endless work of proving that family meant showing up. She thought about Bryn growing up fearless because the people around her had proven the world could be safe, about Lennon healing through art and found family, about Declan becoming the kind of man who helped others instead of just surviving himself. She thought about 927 people who'd shown up because one of their own called, who'd stayed because the work mattered, who'd proven that protection was a verb that required daily action. And she thought about the next kid, the one in Tucson, the one who'd called because he'd heard that maybe possibly there were people who gave a damn, people who stepped in, people who made protection mean something real. Her phone buzzed. Text from the kid. Just 2 words. "You coming?" she typed back. 20 minutes. Hold on. Behind her, Declan and Lennon and Bryn rode in formation. Family assembled by violence and choice and the stubborn belief that some promises were worth keeping no matter the cost. Above them, stars wheeled through their ancient patterns, indifferent to human drama. But down here on highways cutting through desert night, people were writing different patterns. Stories of rescue and redemption, of grandmothers who fought like lions, of boys who screamed when silence was safer, of sisters who learned to trust again, of families that assembled themselves from broken pieces and became something stronger than the sum of their parts. The miles disappeared beneath them, each one carrying them toward another child who needed proof that someone was coming. That protection was real. That sworn oaths meant something permanent and true. Marlo twisted the throttle. The Harley surged forward, carrying her toward the next battle, the next custody fight, the next grandmother who needed an army, and the next child who needed proof that adults could keep their word. This was her legacy now, not the patches or the programs or the numbers in a database, but the lived reality that when you called for help, someone answered. That when you were vulnerable, someone stepped between you and danger. That when you'd been unseen so long, you'd forgotten what being noticed felt like. Someone looked at you and said, "You matter now." A boy named Declan had given her that gift nearly 3 years ago when he screamed instead of staying silent, had taken a bullet meant for her and created an oath that rippled across states and generations and hearts. She was spending the rest of her life paying that forward, making sure no child screamed into darkness without someone answering, making sure no grandmother fought alone, making sure protection meant something more than good intentions. The Tucson lights appeared on the horizon, city glow against desert black. Somewhere in that sprawl, a 14-year-old boy was waiting, hoping, testing if the promises he'd heard were real or just another lie adults told. Marlo Finnegan was about to prove they were real, was about to show him what 927 people could do when one of their own said someone needed help, was about to make him part of a family he didn't know he was joining. Because that's what sacred oaths meant. That's what the Lionheart patch represented. That's what happened when you decided that some debts transcended money or time or personal convenience. You showed up. You kept your word. You proved that protection was a choice you made every single day. And you made damn sure that nobody who called for help ever called alone.